All right, hello everybody. So we're going to do the financial equivalent of turning water into wine. And I try to generate this image in Google Gemini, and for some reason we got water coming here and then water coming there. And I said put the water in the funnel, and for some reason Google Gemini couldn't get the guy to put the water in the funnel and turn it to wine. But that's what we're going to do today. $0 water into $5,160.71 dollars of cash flow wine, if that even makes sense. And if you don't believe me, I just do this demonstration all the time where we just have someone who's completely broke but makes a lot of money, $0 left over, and then in one instant, the $0 turns into over $5,000 of cash flow. And if you're new to the channel, we'll go over it right now about how this is possible. And let's just go ahead and start from the very beginning. So this is the question that I always like to answer, right? So let's just go right here. And then you see that if you're someone who makes really good income and you have absolutely nothing left over, $0 in your checking savings for the current budget for your month, and you have all this debt, you have 10 credit cards and 2 more loans on top of that, a nice auto loan, $46,000 loan, auto loan, and then a $250,000 mortgage. So we're one of those people who makes good money and decide to go out on all our cars or our car rather than the housing, even though we do own a house, right? And then on top of that, we have $2,000 of expenses per month that we always have to pay for. So what we're trying to do is get rid of all of our debt, and then we want to get to an optimal state where all we have to do is pay for the things that we would always have to pay for, even if we're debt free, right? So this is what we're gonna do here: same income, same expenses, including debts, and we're gonna do something a little bit different, even though it looks exactly the same. We're gonna not save money, right? But it's deliberate. So what's the difference between the left side and the right side? Is on the right side, we're deliberately not saving money. And on the left side, we're shocked that we haven't saved money, right? And this is what we now call the velocity method. So this right here, and you might be thinking, what's the big deal? How do you turn financial water into wine? And I'll show you, right? So what we're going to do is dump all of our money into something called a line of credit. If you don't know what a line of credit is, it's basically a financial tool where you can borrow money, pay it back, and then use it over and over again. So if you have a home equity line of credit, you get up to 80% of your home's equity, which is just the value of the home minus any debts tied to it, right? And so let's just assume we get a $200,000 8% line of credit. Now, what we're going to do is rank our debts using something called the cash flow index system. And basically, all it is the debt amount divided by the monthly payment, and then it gives us a ranking system. And the lower the numbers, especially below 50, that's the one we want to pay off first. And then here we have this really high number. So what does this high number mean? It essentially just means pay it off last, right? So think about it. If you had a $250,000 mortgage and you wanted to pay it off, you only get about $1,100 of cash flow back, right? Whereas what we can do is just pay off this 35 grand credit card, and we would get the equivalent amount in cash flow back. So it's very, um, what would you say? It's you get more bang for your buck here than you would with the mortgage, right? 250 for about 1100 or 35 for 1100. I will take this, right? And so this is what we're gonna do. So it's gonna be 5, 8, 15, 27, 30, 37, 10, 35, 12, 15, and then we're gonna go ahead and sum it up. And then that's going to be $164,000 of credit card debt, $164,000, right? And so we're going to take these low cash flow index rankings, and this is the financial equivalent of turning water into wine, okay? And once we transfer that debt into a line of credit, guess what happens here? These payments go to zero, and just by transferring debt, we literally went from $0 to $5,160.71. Yeah, I know. I mean, you can do this too. I'm not special, right? You just need Excel You just need to list a bunch of credit cards and then just transfer them to line of credit and calculate the cash flow index, right? It's just basic, I don't know, fifth grade math and knowing how to do Excel. But yes, the $0 turns into over $5,000, $5,160.71 of cash flow without making more money. And I would say this is the equivalent of turning water into wine in the financial world. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, and I just do it pretty much every single day. Now, the final step is you put your entire paycheck, the entire $9,000, into the line of credit as an overpayment, and then you take your expenses out once they're due, and then after every single month, the balance of the line of credit should go down about $5,000, right? And the reason why we put the money in the line of credit is because the line of credit is the only tool out there where you could dump your money in. So let's say I've dumped $9,000 into that line of credit, and I can immediately take it out like the next second after, right? So you can't do that even with the credit card. Like if I put this entire paycheck into the credit card, I can't take it out. I'd probably have to do like balance transfers or cash advances, and that just makes life a pain. Same thing with like putting all your money into a loan. That's why I use a line of credit. Pay all your money in, and then take whatever you need out, and then you're using all of your money to attack debt. And so that's what we're gonna do. And look how easy it is. So you get the next month's balance based on the previous month's balance, previous month's interest, minus whatever our cash flow is, 5160.71. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance, multiply it by the interest rate, and then divide it by 12, right? And then now you see that the balance of this line of credit is going down. Okay, wait, what? Yeah, it's going down. And then you see that in month 36, in about 3 years, it's completely gone, right? So yeah, I mean, 3 years might seem a lot, like really a lot to a lot of people, but really, like you start at zero, right? Like you had good income and you essentially became the target of the banks. Now, let me just talk about who the bank's favorite customer is. The bank's favorite customer is someone who does not need money, right? Remember this phrase that banks don't lend money to people who need it. So when they see someone who's high income, they want to target that person and eventually, get have that person get to a point where they're so much in debt that there's nothing to drain out of them, right? Kind of like a leech. Now, why do I talk about this? Because a lot of times people think, "Oh my goodness, I can get a line of credit because I watched this demonstration." But you can't if you start out at zero because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Now, why do I demonstrate this with the free and clear line of credit? Is because if you ever go to a realistic scenario where someone has all this debt and usually with the maxed out line of credit, oh my goodness, this will be here forever. And it's actually easier to understand if you start off with the more basic scenario rather than what people realistically get into, which is just something like this with 22 debts and $4.10 left over and this type of income, right? I'm just trying to make a point that, hey, if you had a free and clear line of credit, this would have been a savior and you probably would have never been here, right? But you didn't until it's too late. And that's why people who scoff at education sometimes pay the price later on, right? But back to my point, banks don't lend money to people who need it. They don't lend money to people who need it. But if a bank did give you a free and clear line of credit, this would have been a lifesaver. And that's what I want to show you. But you're not going to get it. You have to get the credit before you need it, right? A lot of people haven't internalized this. Even people who've been listening to my channel for, I don't know, many, many years, many months, they hear it, but then I got to brainwash you all. And that's why I always have these YouTube community posts where I'm literally brainwashing you all. Banks don't lend money to people who need it. And that's how you know you're brainwashed, when you got the swirly eyes and the gaping jaw look, right? They don't lend money to people who need it. All right, so let's keep continuing to turn water into find the financial version of turning water into wine. And so now what we have is the auto loan and the mortgage right here. And let's just kind of do this. And I'm going to copy and paste and do 36. And then, okay, And then, so what we have is the current balance of the debt here, right? For each of them, the auto loan and the mortgage. Now, I'm going to tell you something. The average person is just going to look at this 4% interest rate and wants to focus on paying this off, the 4% mortgage. Now, why would we not want to pay this one off first? It's because of this cash flow index number, which says pay this one off because you'll get more bang for your buck in terms of cash flow. 19 grand for 826 instead of just trying to pay it down the mortgage, right? So let's go ahead and do this, which is 19 grand. I'm going to go ahead and do this, 19 grand. And then this is going to be plus 19230.72. And then guess what happens? Because now the auto loan has been transferred, this payment is now gone, right? And then now we're almost at $6,000 of cash flow. Oh my goodness, this is so easy. All right, so now this is here minus 5987.27, and then I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste, and then we see that in 39 months it was completely paid off. And I'm gonna do this, put 39 months. Actually, I didn't even mark this one. This is 36 months. And how much credit card debt was it? It was 164K, right? 164K. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste. And then now it's 39 months till the auto loan was paid off. And then I'll be honest, like all right, so 164,440. I'm like totally like sleepy right now. I don't know why, but all right, so now 210K, and now is the 30-year mortgage. So now we go to month 39. This is gonna be 0, and then now we pay off the 30-year mortgage. Now we have two choices where we could pay it off. Number one is extra payments, but some of you might be interested in using a line of credit to help pay it off, right? Because the line of credit is still the only tool available where you could dump all your money in and then get it out, right? Whereas other tools, you might end up complicating your finances, just like this person right here. I mean, look at all these debts, right? 22 debts. And how did we get here? Is because we were not putting all of our income into one place. And you can see right here, once we started using the line of credit as our main operating account and dumping all of our money in, take our expenses out, we're able to successively just kind of pay off the debts, right? Look at that. Okay, that was so simple. All right, so now 235,000 is the current balance. And so you have two options. Number one is extra payments, and then number two is use a HELOC. But if you're going to use a HELOC, you have to understand there's a very big difference between paying a part of your loan with a HELOC versus replacing your entire loan with the HELOC, right? If you want to replace your entire loan with the HELOC, that's probably a big mistake, especially if there's an interest rate difference between the HELOC and the 30-year mortgage. Okay, but if you do extra payments, directly with a loan, just make extra payment with the loan. You can do that. It's just that that's the default option that nobody does. But I just want to present to you an alternative, and what we're going to do is we're going to do something called, we're going to sweep some of the loan into the line of credit. So what we're going to do is take $10,000 of the loan, right? So it's 235. We're going to make it 225, and then move a piece of the loan into the line of credit. So this is what I'm going to do right here. So let's do plus 10,000, and then you see that in 2 months it gets paid off. 2 months it gets paid off, right? And then bam, 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 bam. So you see that you kind of paid off a little bit more than 40 grand right here. This is just how it works. It's not exact math calculation. If you want to see a more finer math calculation, just take a look at this, right? Income, expenses, how much you're moving into the line of credit, what's the current balance of the loan. Now, here's a crazy thing, okay? I'm going to show you something crazy. Let's say we used a 1% line of credit. What if we got a 1% line of credit? Okay. You see how the interest is 13 grand, but the payoff is 3 years. Now let's do this. Let's do an 8% line of credit. You see how it's 15 grand and the payoff is 3 years. So this interest rate is, yes, it matters, but not as much as you think. And let's turn 8 to 15. Yeah, you see how that barely went up? So, you know, a lot of people freak out like, "Oh my goodness, you're using an 8% line of credit to pay off a 4% or 3% loan." Who cares? Okay? If you know how to do it right, it's gonna be like a blip on the bank's balance sheet of how much interest you paid. You think the bank really cares about whether you paid 15 or 16 grand in interest rather than 131? That's what they really care about, right? That's what they really care about. That you didn't pay that extra 131 that they thought you were gonna pay, right? You think and here's the cool thing, right? If I do 0%, right? So 0, 1, barely like this the extra percentage points barely make a difference. They make a marginal difference, but it's almost negligible, right? It's crazy. Okay. Yeah, you know, now if I had a 0% line of credit, this is what I actually do. This is what I really want to do, right? I want to replace the mortgage with the line of credit, right? Because you don't pay any interest and it pays off 2.8 years, but 13 grand is pretty good. So anyways, there's a lot of nuance when it comes to this that, you know, you'll hear on the internet that you should always replace your loan with the line of credit. I would say, yeah, if the loan interest is higher than the line of credit interest, definitely, but you can even still use a high interest rate line of credit to pay off the loan and you'll be fine if you know how to do it correctly. Okay. All right. So that's it for today, folks. Financial equivalent of turning water into wine. Let me get the AI generated image again. Give me one moment. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at this right here. And then you see that this awkward picture. I don't know what's happening. Like, is the wine like gushing out water and spitting it back out? I don't know what's going on, but apparently this is $0 water turning into over $5,000 of wine, and that's essentially what we did today. All right, so if you want to let me know that you made it to this end of this video, just type in the comment box below, financially turning water into wine. That's because that's what we've done. Financially turn water into wine, right? All right. Well, have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.